First episode begins in a movie theater in Derry on January 4th, 1962. A theater attendant discovers that a young boy, Matty, has snuck into a screening of The Music Man. Matty hides in the theater lobby as the attendant chats with Hank about the situation. We learn that Matty comes from a tough home life. Hank asks his daughter, Ronnie, if she's seen him. Spying Matty behind a standee, Ronnie lies, claiming he went in the other direction. Matty uses this opportunity to escape. Then, we see Matty walking the road leading outside the town limits. A car pulls over, a family of 4 within. The woman asks if Matty needs a ride. The man offers to drive him to his parents' house. Matty gets in the back seat, claiming he wants to go anywhere but Derry. The woman tells Matty he's in luck. They're heading to Portland. Matty sits beside the couple's daughter and son. The daughter opens a plastic container marked liver. She puts her fingers in its contents before sniffing them. She tries to shove her liver-covered fingers under Matty's nose. Meanwhile, the woman puts her son's spelling skills to the test. Matty sees the vehicle returning to Derry. The man drives around town as a terrified and desperate Matty tries to determine how to get out of the car. It's locked, though, and the man refuses to pull over and let him out. The son spells out increasingly odd and macabre words, adding to the mounting tension. Matty grabs the steering wheel and tries to wrest control of it from the man, but to no avail. Then, we see the woman is pregnant. She goes into labor in the passenger seat. A horrifying creature claws its way out of her, complete with a head growing from its chest, taloned limbs, and bat-like wings. As the woman tries to catch it, it flies into the rear windshield. Poor Matty puts in his pacifier and clamps his hands over his ears, turning away from the scene. Suddenly, as the car crosses a bridge, we see Matty's pacifier fly out of the window and into the river below. It floats beneath the bridge and past the title card for the series. 4 months later, Phil looks through binoculars as a plane lands at the Derry Air Force Base. There, Major Leroy Hanlon and Captain Polly Russo disembark said plane. They learn they're only 7 hours from the Soviet base, making Derry the first line of defense. Additionally, we learn about the enigmatic special projects, which seems like it might factor into the narrative down the line. At the local high school, Lily braves stares and scrutiny as she walks down a bustling corridor. She opens her locker to find several jars of pickles. One falls onto the floor. Her best friend Marge is angry on her behalf. At the same time, Phil and Teddy chat about aliens. Well, Phil's really into them. He believes the military base is hiding something. Why study for tests when World War III is imminent? Next, Hanlon faces racism from one of his subordinates. General Shaw puts the officer in his place. After this, Shaw apologizes for the less than warm welcome. He invites Hanlon to meet at his office the following day for a chat. Later, Teddy does homework while Phil decides to be a peeping Tom. Teddy changes the subject from women's anatomy to Matty. It's been 4 months. He disappeared without a trace. The police never found his body, so that means he's a runaway. Phil doesn't want to open that can of worms. Teddy blames him and Phil for forgetting Matty's birthday. Matty's mom paid them in candy to attend his birthday party. Phil insists that discussing Matty's death won't bring him back to life. Next, Lily stands in her bathroom. She looks at a charm on her bracelet, recalling a time when Matty invited her to the viewing deck of the tower where we first saw Phil. It's been abandoned for years, but Phil, Teddy, and Matty have turned it into a secret hangout. Matty gives Lily a turtle charm and urges her not to tell the others that he invited her here. There's a vetting process for access to this space. Lily assumes it's because of her reputation as Loony Lily. We learn about her father's tragic passing. While watching fireworks, Matty moves in to kiss Lily. Lily backs away. Matty apologizes. Lily states that she views them as friends. In the present, Lily's mother tells Lily to lay out her clothes the following day to visit her father's grave. It's been a year since his death. Lily doesn't want to, though. Her mom remarks that she's not the only one who's grieving in this world. After this, Lily turns on the bathwater. Suddenly, she hears what sounds like Matty singing "Ya Got Trouble" from The Music Man. His voice emanates from the bath drain. She assumes he's in the sewer. Lily calls out Matty's name. She urges Matty to come home. He won't let me, Maddie replies. Then we see a couple of bloody fingers emerge from the drain. The following day at school, Lily informs Marge about what she saw. Marge is incredulous, but Lily knows what she saw and heard. She urges Lily not to give everyone something else to whisper about her. Later, Lily, Phil, and Teddy chat in the viewing deck of the tower about her encounter with Maddie. Like Marge, the boys don't believe Lily. Elsewhere, Hanlon meets Shaw in the latter's office. We learn the reason why Hanlon was called to the Derry Air Force Base, to finish what he started during the Korean War. Shaw wants Hanlon to test the military's new B-52 and, if necessary, use it to attack the enemy. That evening, Teddy sits down to dinner with his family. Teddy is preparing for his bar mitzvah. His father asks how the Haftarah studying is going. Teddy pivots, asking his dad if someone could kidnap a child and keep them underground. His mother, father, and older brother are shocked by this query. Teddy's dad scolds Teddy for asking such a question, reminding him that his grandparents escaped Buchenwald and about the atrocities of the Holocaust. After this, Teddy reads his comic book in his bedroom. Suddenly, the lamp next to him flickers until it goes out. Then the light returns after a few seconds of darkness, revealing that Teddy's lampshade is made out of the faces of his Jewish brethren. The lamp falls off Teddy's nightstand after he kicks a pillow at it. He scrambles off the bed and finds sanctuary under his desk. Unfortunately, the lamp rolls toward him, the faces on the lampshade talking to him. Teddy covers his face and screams. The light switches off, the lamp back near the nightstand. His brother pokes his head in, muttering that he can't believe they're related after seeing Teddy under his desk. Then, Teddy recounts what he saw in his room to Phil and Lily. Well, between bouts of vomiting into a bucket, Phil insists his friend is telling the truth. Our trio decides to investigate Maddie's disappearance. They start by researching newspaper articles at the library. Phil's little sister, Susie, tags along. One article mentions an unidentified 12-year-old girl and her father who last saw Maddie before he vanished. The authorities ruled it a homicide. This leads our intrepid investigators to Ronnie's home. Ronnie orders them to leave, revealing that the cops tried to pin Maddie's murder on her dad. Before she heads inside, Ronnie overhears Lily mention Maddie's singing from the sewer. Ronnie reveals she heard singing too. She knows what the song is from. Later, two men in gas masks attack Hanlon in his quarters. They demand he hand over the specs to the new B-52. Hanlon fights them off before one of them trains a gun at him, threatening to kill him if he doesn't comply. Russo bursts into Hanlon's room and gives the attackers a taste of their own medicine before they flee. Next, Ronnie breaks into the movie theater with Lily, Phil, Teddy, and Susie in tow. She puts on The Music Man, specifically at the Ya Got Trouble scene. Lily confirms that this is the song Maddie sang to her from the bath drain. Suddenly, our crew sees Maddie in the scene. He's holding a swaddled baby. They encourage Maddie to move toward them and out of the screen. Maddie refuses to join them in the real world. He buries his head in the baby's blanket before lifting it, revealing that infamous Pennywise smile on his face. He hurls the baby at the screen. It bursts through said screen as the same two-headed, winged creature from the beginning of the episode. It flies toward the kids. Phil and Susie attempt to make a break for it as the beast grabs Teddy. Lily screams, gazing up at the creature as it rips Teddy to shreds, covering her in blood. The monster grows in size. This time, it slaughters poor Phil. Ronnie screams while in the projection booth. She tries to open the door to help the others, but it's locked. While under the seats, Lily spots Susie a few rows above her. She urges Susie to reach under the chairs and grab her hand. They lock hands as the creature snatches Susie. When Ronnie finally breaks out of the projection booth, she barrels into the theater to find Lily is the last one standing. The others are dead. Ronnie and Lily hear the beast snarling on the other side of the space. Ronnie ushers Lily out before locking the door behind them. In the lobby, Ronnie asks what happened. Lily explains that the creature killed them. Then Lily looks down, realizing she's holding Susie's hand. She emits a blood-curdling scream. Episode 2 picks up in the uneasy quiet after the theater massacre. Lily wakes from a nightmare, hoping the horror was imagined, but reality closes in immediately, Police are staking out Hank Grogan's apartment, convinced he's tied to the missing kids. Inside, his mother rambles, and Hank keeps a tight hold on Ronnie, who is still shaken and withdrawn. Across town, the Hanlon family reunites. Charlotte and young Will arrive to join Leroy in Derry, and Will's excitement about his new room contrasts sharply with the town's strange undercurrent. Leroy gifts him a telescope, joking about spying on neighbors, something Will refuses with unexpected seriousness. At school, the social fractures widen. Marge is desperate to anchor herself with the popular girls, even if it means mocking others. Ronnie's presence in the hallway draws stares, but Lily approaches her without hesitation. Marge tries to push Lily toward the popular table, but Lily is done caring about groups when her friends are dead. Will's first day is rocky, ending with a prank that embarrasses him, though one boy, Rich, offers a small kindness. Meanwhile, Leroy is consumed with a troubling revelation. His attacker, Masters, wasn't a foreign agent, but a local racist soldier acting on his own hate. That night, Ronnie's trauma takes shape in a terrifying vision. Her bed tightens around her like skin, filling with water. Rising from it is her dead mother, decaying and furious, blaming Ronnie for her death and for the deaths of the children. An umbilical cord drags her toward a monstrous, toothed cavity glowing with yellow eyes. When her father bursts into the room, the apparition vanishes, leaving Ronnie shaking. Elsewhere, 3 black military officers, including Dick Halloran, discuss their recent interrogation, only to be dismissed by local police and quietly monitored. At a dig site on native land, Halloran grows increasingly sick. The military has been digging several such sites for months, believing something buried in Derry emits a mysterious energy. Back at school, Lily confides in Ronnie, but admits she can't tell the truth about what she saw. Her past psychiatric stay makes her an easy target, and she fears being taken away again. Will meets Rich during lunch, bonding over books and shared isolation, but when chaos erupts in the hallway, he accidentally crashes into a teacher, earning detention, where he ends up sitting beside Ronnie. Lily, meanwhile, is taken from school by police. Chief Clint Bowers interrogates her, twisting her words and preying on her fear. Pressured until she doubts herself, she breaks and Hank is arrested. Ronnie confronts her afterward, devastated. At the base, Leroy confronts Masters, who fumbles with the weapon he supposedly handled expertly. Leroy realizes something is off and goes to General Shaw, who drops the truth. Shaw orchestrated the attack to test Leroy's courage. Shaw wants him for a secret program. Furious but trapped, Leroy follows Shaw to a hidden wing of the base, where he reveals the real mission. The Soviets and Cubans are searching for the same thing the U.S. is hunting, an ancient force buried in Derry, one that radiates fear. They want to secure it first. Lily's unraveling continues. While shopping alone, she hears whispers accusing her. The aisles distort, trapping her in a maze of hallucinations. Her dead friends' faces printed across cereal boxes, her father's rotting head floating inside a pickle jar that mutates into a crawling mass. When she snaps back, she's surrounded by horrified strangers. The outburst sends her to Juniper Hill. That night, Shaw receives word from the dig site. Rain pours as Halloran and the team uncover a 1930s car buried deep in the earth, packed with human skeletons. The military believes they're closing in on the ancient source of fear beneath Derry, unaware of the darkness they're stirring awake. Episode 3 opens in the 1930s at a carnival, where young Francis Shaw wanders into a hall of mirrors. In the shadows, an old one-eyed man taunts him, sending Francis fleeing into his father's arms. His father mocks him, but gives him a slingshot he won for him. On their way home, their car breaks down and they meet a native girl named Rose selling water. Francis trades her the slingshot and later plays with her and the local kids. When he runs into the woods alone, Rose refuses to follow, terrified of something within the trees. Francis soon learns why. The one-eyed man returns, twisting into a monstrous form with rows of long teeth. Rose saves him by striking the creature with a rock, and it retreats when they reach the tree line. In the present, Lily arrives at Juniper Hill, surrounded by the unsettling noise of patients. A housekeeper tells her she believes Lily truly saw something impossible and encourages her to make things right with Ronnie. Meanwhile, Ronnie's father, Hank, is interrogated by Chief Bowers, who insists Hank was outside the night of the murders. Bowers reveals someone signed a statement placing him there. At the military dig site, the unearthed car full of skeletons belongs to a 1935 gang, but it's not the force they're seeking. Dick Halloran, struggling with his psychic visions, insists he must be physically above the source. Shaw sends him up in a helicopter with Hanlon and Russo, treating Halloran like a compass. In his hands is an old cigar box holding the same slingshot Francis once traded away. As he touches it, he slips into a psychic trance. Water rises beneath him, and suddenly he's no longer in the helicopter but deep in a sewer, facing Pennywise's circus wagon. The curtain drops, revealing glowing eyes and a mound of floating corpses, including his grandmother. As the entity asks, "Who are you?" Halloran tries to escape, unaware he is actually opening the helicopter's rear hatch. Hanlon tackles him before he falls out. Back on the ground, Halloran warns Shaw that the thing below Derry saw him, and continuing the dig will bring disaster. Lily returns to school and confronts Ronnie, promising to tell the police the truth. But without proof, no one will listen. She brings out a camera, and the girls turn to Will Hanlon for help developing film in the school darkroom. Rich joins them, certain Will will help, insisting he's drawn to Ronnie, even if Will denies it. The group begins forming a fragile alliance, and Rich suggests a way to draw the evil out. That night, the town's native council meets. Rose, now elderly, advises her nephew not to interfere with the military yet. Later, Shaw visits her shop. Neither has seen the other in 50 years, and Shaw confesses he had forgotten about her until returning to Derry, something Rose says happens often here. Shaw lies about the purpose of the dig, claiming they're clearing land for water pipes. She reluctantly agrees to speak with the council about which areas to avoid. Halloran later visits the Hanlon home for dinner. When Leroy notices Halloran asked about Will without ever being told he had a son, Halloran admits he sees things without seeing them. Leroy confesses he felt something indescribable the night he was attacked, something he now realizes Halloran sensed as well. Meanwhile, Will, Lily, Ronnie, and Rich gather at night in a cemetery. Surrounded by candlelight, Rich recites a prayer meant to attract spirits. Nothing happens at first, and frustration builds. Ronnie is still wounded that Will doubted her, and she leaves with Lily. As Will and Rich try to catch up, the cemetery shifts around them, the exit sliding farther away each time they pedal toward it. Their three dead friends appear, floating above the grass, faces rotted and reaching for them. The boys flee as the ground caves beneath their wheels. Lily manages to snap photos of the pursuit before Will becomes separated and pulled toward the mausoleum. Inside, a pale hand reaches toward him. He screams and presses his camera's shutter just as something looms in the dark. At the cemetery gate, Lily, Ronnie, and Rich cling to each other until Will suddenly emerges alive. Fear gives way to relief, and the four embrace. United now, they break into the school darkroom to develop the film. The photos slowly reveal the spirits of their dead friends, twisted but unmistakable. Then Will's final photo develops. Behind the mausoleum's shadows, a tall figure stands with glowing eyes. The outline becomes clear. Episode 4 pushes as the kids deliver their developed photographs to Chief Bowers. The police dismiss the evidence. The ghostly figures the children saw aren't visible, and the clown in one photo is dismissed as a statue. With no help coming, the group accepts that adults won't believe them. Will returns home increasingly distressed. When Charlotte notices his fear, she forbids him from going anywhere except school until she understands what's happening. Leroy, unaware of Will's claims, takes his son fishing in hopes of distracting him. While Leroy returns to the car for more gear, the entity emerges from the river in the form of a burned and grotesque version of Leroy, dragging Will underwater. Leroy reaches him in time, pulling him out as Will bleeds from fresh scratches on his arm. A single red balloon drifts across the river, confirming for both that something is there. At school, Marge apologizes to Lily for her previous bullying, but the other girls pressure Marge into continuing their plan to humiliate Lily. Feeling guilty, Marge goes to warn her, but before she can, something begins to happen. Her eyes bulge grotesquely, and she flees in terror. Lily rushes after her, dropping her mother's anxiety pill in the panic. Marge stumbles into the shop classroom where the possession intensifies. In agony, she stabs at her eyes and ultimately turns a table saw on herself. When the other students arrive, all they see is Lily at Marge's side, appearing to be the cause rather than the desperate witness. General Shaw then brings Leroy to observe as Halloran enters a guided psychic vision inside Taniel's memories. Through the boy's recollection, Halloran witnesses the tribal origins of Derry's monster. The elders once warned settlers to avoid the woods, which housed an ancient evil that fell to earth millions of years ago as a fallen star. A sacred dagger, forged from that star's remains, was used to battle the creature. When the monster fed on settlers and grew stronger, a young girl led an effort to break additional shards from the fallen star. She buried 13 of them in a circle, a cage, not a weapon, hoping to contain the entity rather than kill it. Before the vision ends, Tennille gives Halloran a final clue. To find the shards, he must follow the tunnels beneath the old well. Episode 5 opens with Tennille being rushed to the infirmary after Halloran's psychic journey into his memories. Leroy demands answers, and General Shaw finally reveals the truth. Tennille is part of a centuries-old order sworn to keep the hidden pillars protected. The military has learned the Neibolt house contains a tunnel that leads directly toward them. Shaw sees this as a chance to end the Cold War without risking American lives. But Leroy is furious that his family was placed in harm's way. At the hospital, Lily visits Marge, who has survived her horrific ordeal. Marge protects Lily by lying about what happened, insisting her injury came from broken glasses. The two reconcile, but Lily's fear deepens. Later, at the standpipe, she is confronted by a shocking sight. Matty, thought long dead, appears weak and terrified inside a tent. He claims Pennywise kept him alive to feed on his fear, and that Phil is also alive, but unable to speak or move. Matty insists the entity sleeps during the day, giving him a brief chance to escape. Across town, Hank is taken out publicly toward the Shawshank bus, only for chaos to break out when someone attempts to attack him. Charlotte witnesses it all, including a disturbing moment when a smiling officer locks eyes with her. When Leroy arrives, he urges Charlotte to listen carefully. Something is happening, and it involves their son. Shaw meets Rose, revealing that his erased memories of Derry resurfaced years ago after a government-issued drug triggered them. He believes the entity can be controlled, but Rose warns him that attempting to use it will destroy them. She gives Tanielle a ceremonial dagger for protection. Meanwhile, Leroy moves his family onto the military base. Charlotte later learns the Shawshank bus has crashed and Hank has escaped. Ingrid secretly meets him, revealing herself as the woman he was with on the night of the theater attack, and brings him to Charlotte for safety. Lily gathers Marge and their friends at the standpipe, determined to save Phil themselves. Matty refuses to return to the sewers, but Lily forces him to lead the way. She hands out more of her mother's pills to keep the panic under control. At the same time, the military launches its assault on the Neibolt house. Armed soldiers, Halloran, Tanielle, and Leroy descend into the tunnels, immediately separated by illusions that exploit their deepest fears. Halloran is thrown into a vision of his childhood, confronted by his grandparents and a spectral box that pulses with a yellow glow. Elsewhere, soldiers are picked off by grotesque manifestations, including the skeletal form of Uncle Sam. Tanielle loses the glowing dagger in the water, while Leroy encounters a false version of Charlotte, which he destroys with a gunshot as the apparition smiles and disappears. In the sewers near the standpipe, the children grow disoriented from the pills. Voices echo around them, and bodies float through the dark water. Then Matty's corpse rises, exposing the boy beside them as Pennywise in disguise. The clown reveals himself fully at last and charges the children. Lily stumbles and is left behind as the others flee. Leroy and Polly hear the children's screams. When Leroy finds Will, Hanlon mistakes the boy for another illusion and fires his gun. Polly steps in front of Will, taking the bullet meant for him. With his dying breath, he tells Leroy to make it count. Lily reaches a dead end. Pennywise traps her, shifting from the clown to her mutilated father and back again. As he charges, something stops him mid-attack. The fallen dagger lies beside Lily, glowing with a force the entity cannot cross. Pennywise withdraws, and Lily takes the weapon. Back at the base, Leroy gives his report. Shaw vows that Derry's indigenous residents will answer for what happened in the tunnels, but Leroy cares only about keeping his family safe. Halloran, missing from the debriefing, finally emerges from the woods, exhausted but alive. A figure appears ahead of him. When it turns, it is Polly, eyes pure white, and Halloran's fear box lies open at his feet, its contents ready to break free. Next, we see a flashback to 1935 at Juniper Hills. A young girl named Mabel is quietly led from her bed by Ingrid Kirsch. Ingrid takes her down to the basement, explaining that this is where Simpersmix, it told her to meet. A red balloon drifts through the darkness, and Pennywise finally steps into view. In the present day, Leroy is consumed by grief over Polly's death and directs his anger at Will, blaming him for going into the sewers. Will snaps back, insisting he would never sacrifice his friends the way his father has. Leroy responds by striking him, and Will runs off. Convinced Pennywise is inside his head, Will grabs his bike and rides off through town, while Leroy is left shaken by what he's done. At the hideout, Lily reveals the enchanted dagger that repelled Pennywise before. She insists they all need to return to the sewers together and kill the creature once and for all. Ronnie is horrified by the idea and calls Lily reckless, sparking a heated argument. Rich tries to calm them, but it's no use. The group fractures, each person storming off in a different direction. Dick returns to the black spot with the boys, but he's clearly unraveling. He can't sleep, struggles to focus, and is haunted by disturbing visions. As more bodies turn up around the airbase, Leroy grows worried and confronts Dick in his darkened bedroom. Dick speaks of the Shining, claiming Pennywise has opened a box in his mind and released the dead to torment him. The dead, he says, know things the living don't. When Leroy presses him about Pennywise's location, Dick turns hostile, accusing Leroy of selfishness and forcing him out. Hank is also hiding at the black spot. Ronnie arrives with Will, driven there by Charlotte, and reunites with Hank. Watching them together is painful for Will. Charlotte later tells Leroy where Hank is and explains she plans to get him out of town by morning, urging Leroy to fix things with his son first. At school, Lily is isolated and plagued by visions. She clutches the dagger at her desk and suddenly screams, startling the class. After being reprimanded, she storms out. Meanwhile, Rich and Marge grow closer, and Marge finally stands up to Patty, choosing to align herself with the new Losers Club. After school, everyone gathers at the black spot, except Lily. Alone, she seeks out Ingrid and breaks into her house. In the attic, Lily discovers photos and mementos that reveal the truth. Ingrid had followed the children at the graveyard, disguised as Periwinkle, hoping Pennywise would appear. Ingrid explains her father was a carnival performer known as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, whom she loved dearly before losing him. When children like Mabel mentioned Pennywise at the asylum, Ingrid believed her father might have returned. Instead, she unknowingly fed Mabel to the monster and was manipulated into sacrificing other children, all in the desperate hope of seeing her father again. Horrified, Lily flees the house on her bike, screaming as she rides away. At the same time, tensions in Derry reach a boiling point. Clint reveals that a woman has tipped off the authorities about Hank's location. Fueled by fear and hysteria, the townspeople mobilize and descend on the black spot in force, determined to take Hank back. Next, we see a flashback to 1908, introducing Pennywise the Dancing Clown as he appears during a bustling carnival show. Children adore him as he performs for the crowd, finishing with his now famous dance. The kids swarm the stage in excitement, forcing Bob Gray to retreat backstage. Behind the scenes, a young Ingrid proudly shows off her Periwinkle costume. It was once her mother's stage name, and Ingrid is visibly shaken when her father calls her by it for the first time. Later that night, before the next performance, a strange child cloaked in darkness approaches Bob Gray, remarking that children seem to like him. When the child claims to be lost and asks for help finding his parents, Bob follows him into the nearby woods. He never returns. All that's found is his blood-stained kerchief, and the circus assumes he was killed by wolves. In the present, chaos erupts as the townsfolk descend on the black spot, demanding that Hank come out. Dick tries to protect him, but Hank ultimately reveals himself, devastating Ronnie. The situation quickly spirals out of control. The mob locks the doors from the outside and decides to burn the building down, hurling Molotov cocktails as flames spread. Inside, panic reigns, and Dick is overwhelmed by visions of the dead mingling with the living. Amid the inferno, Pennywise appears, taunting Dick and feeding on the terror. Despite the destruction, most of the survivors, including all the main characters, manage to escape or endure the fire. Rich, however, does not. He shoves Marge into a trunk to shield her from the flames, sacrificing himself in the process. Outside the black spot, Ingrid, once again dressed as Periwinkle, approaches Stanley when his car breaks down nearby. Before anything can be done, Pennywise delivers the killing blow, while Ingrid watches helplessly. The spell finally breaks, and Ingrid realizes the truth about what Pennywise really is. Her awakening comes too late. Pennywise reveals its true form, lifting Ingrid into the air and leaving her alive but completely unhinged by the horror she witnesses. In the aftermath, Marge is pulled from the wreckage, traumatized but alive. Dick, meanwhile, is barely holding himself together. Leroy tries to reach him, but Dick is surrounded by the spirits of the dead. Rocking back and forth, he explains that Pennywise has gone back to sleep after the massacre. This, he says, allows him to help locate one of the pillars. He can't see it directly, but by following her, the ghost of a deceased native girl only he can see, he can lead them to it. Officially, the Black Spot tragedy is reported as an electrical fire caused by an illegal speakeasy, with Hank listed among the dead. The cover-up removes suspicion from him, which suits Leroy, who plans to hide Hank with them for now. Charlotte disguises Hank in military gear while Leroy and Dick supervise a dig site. Before long, they uncover one of the pillars, sealed inside a turtle shell. The object is made from the same material as Lily's enchanted dagger. Instead of securing it as planned, new orders arrive from General Shaw to examine the pillar and use the data to locate the others. Leroy fears this decision leaves Derry exposed. His concerns are ignored, and Shaw proceeds with the experiment, destroying the pillar entirely in the name of control. As the structure burns, Pennywise's sleep cycle ends. The creature awakens and immediately appears at Will's home, launching a sudden and violent attack. Next, we witness the consequences of the displaced pillar. Pennywise is fully unbound, and a dense, unnatural fog rolls across Derry. It moves straight to the high school. Using the intercom and mimicking the principal's voice, Pennywise dismisses the older students and orders the younger ones into the gym. More than 100 children gather inside as a spotlight drops onto the principal, who is revealed to be a corpse controlled like a puppet. Pennywise tears the body apart, locking the exits as panic erupts. With the children paralyzed by terror, he unleashes the deadlights, causing them to float helplessly out of the building and into the fog, drifting toward his circus wagon. Elsewhere, Lily, Marge, and Ronnie are cleaning near the standpipe when the fog arrives. They spot missing posters plastered along the barrier wall, including one for Will. Racing to the school, they see Pennywise already leading the floating children away while playing a tuba. Unable to follow on foot, they steal an abandoned milk truck and drive after him. At the base, Leroy desperately tries to call Will, only to hear Pennywise laughing on the other end. The clown asks what frightens a man without fear, and the answer is clear: losing his son. Leroy rushes to Dick Halloran, who is on the brink of suicide, tormented by visions of the dead. Leroy breaks in just in time, begging Dick to help him save Will. The plea pulls Dick back from the edge. As the fog freezes the town over, General Shaw grows uneasy when he learns Leroy and Dick have left the base. They regroup with Charlotte and Rose, who proposes a plan. If Dick can locate the enchanted dagger and restore the missing pillar, Pennywise can be stopped. Rose gives Dick a tea to strengthen his connection, allowing him to see the girl's milk truck crash in the fog. They rush after them, knowing the dagger grows more dangerous the farther it travels from its resting place. The strain is already taking hold of Lily, who begins to unravel while holding the dagger. Realizing its influence, the girls agree to take turns carrying it. Across the frozen river, they see their classmates floating in a silent procession. Leroy urges Dick to enter Pennywise's mind and slow him down. Time is running out. The girls reach the circus wagon and find Will just as Pennywise appears. Ronnie drives the clown back with the dagger, but Pennywise vanishes into the fog and seizes Marge. He torments her with visions of the future, revealing she will become Marge Tozier and have a son named after Rich. If that child is never born, Pennywise will never be defeated. As he prepares to kill her, he suddenly freezes. The floating children drop safely to the ground, awakening as the losers reunite with Will and the adults arrive. The military storms in, killing Teniel and wounding Leroy. He hands the dagger to Will, telling him to bury it and put Pennywise to sleep. As soldiers close in, General Shaw approaches the immobilized clown. Inside Pennywise's mind, he is reliving 1908, humiliated as Bob Gray by the carnival performers. Shaw frees him from the vision, but Pennywise recognizes Shaw as the child from the woods long ago. He transforms, shows Shaw his deepest fear, and devours him. The losers reach the tree where the dagger must be buried, battling its resistance as Pennywise races toward them. Leroy shoots the clown, blowing his head apart, but Pennywise retaliates with the deadlights. Then Rich's ghost appears, running through the fog and helping push the dagger into the ground. Pennywise transforms into a monstrous winged form, but arrives too late. The pillars ignite across the sky, stripping away his faces until he collapses and disintegrates, scattered like embers. In the aftermath, the losers mourn Rich, feeling his presence still with them. At his funeral, Halloran sees Rich's spirit embracing his loved ones and brings his parents a measure of peace. Life slowly resumes. Lily visits her father's grave. Marge reflects on Pennywise's final warning that death may be his beginning. The Hanlon family prepares to leave but ultimately chooses to stay and protect Derry. The season closes 26 years later at Juniper Hill, where Ingrid witnesses another death and calmly reminds a young Beverly Marsh that in Derry, no one who dies ever truly leaves.